All right, guys, we are back. This is January now, and we're starting the second half of our content. Today we're doing Standard 5, and specifically Standard 5.1, although this should also include 5.2, because I think they're both pretty brief. So the question here at the front of it is, what about the rest of the world? You may have noticed that we didn't talk a lot about the rest of the world and the United States interaction with it in all of the first half of the United States history. So what's the reason for that? Why aren't we getting super involved? Well, there are actually a couple reasons for that. I have three here. One of them is going all the way back to George Washington. When George Washington left office at the end of his presidency, one of the things he said is that we should avoid entangling alliances. And what he means by that is if you're starting to interact with other countries, then they have alliances and those countries have alliances. And the more involved you get, the more tangled up you get. He says, just don't do that. Just worry about the United States, take care of yourself, and everything's going to be fine. On top of that, we've had a lot of stuff going on in the United States that kept us from worrying about other countries. We've had westward expansion. We've had the Civil War. We've been going through the Industrial Revolution. So that's going to limit us too. And honestly, our military just wasn't all that big for a part of it. Our Navy certainly wasn't. And for a lot of it, the Army we did have is tied up in fighting the Civil War. We have been expanding. We had Manifest Destiny. We wanted to add land moving westward. That was always something we were interested in. And so we call this type of expansionism that we've had old expansionism. Okay, this is really easy to understand because basically it just means that we wanted more land for the United States because we wanted more resources, more raw materials that we could then ship back to the Northeast. They'd turn them into finished products and we'd sell them around the country for more money. This is going to result in a bunch of new states. In fact, it goes all the way out to California, and eventually we're going to purchase the land that will become Alaska. That's really when we end this. That's in the mid-1860s, early 1860s. And after that, we basically say old expansionism is done because we don't have anywhere else we're going to go on the continent. So what's new expansionism, you would say? Well, new expansionism is a little bit more complicated. It's not just that we want more territory. It's actually got three factors: economic factors, social, and political. Economically, we still need raw materials. We still need resources. So now we're going to start to go outside of what become the 50 states. And we're going to try to get raw materials elsewhere. We'd like to go to Cuba. We'd like to go to the Philippines eventually. We're going to take over Hawaii, which is one of the 50 states, I'm aware. But we're going to pick it up later. Also, we need more people to buy the things that we're making. We've got a lot of raw materials, and so we need more customers. And if we take over, say, the Philippines, then hopefully Filipinos will buy our stuff. Socially, we're going to want to expand because we believed in social Darwinism. We've talked about that before. It's the idea that some people are suited to society and others aren't. Some people are better equipped to live in the world today and other people aren't. And along with this, a lot of people said, well, the United States as a whole is the best. Everybody else is below us. And so we have a responsibility to go get these other cultures elevated up to our level. So let's go out to them and make them like us. You've got a lot of Americans who want to spread Christianity, and not just Christianity, but American Christianity. You've got to look just like us. You've got to worship just like us. Wear the same kind of clothes that we do. And that is a bit of an issue. And also democracy. We want everybody to have the same freedoms that we do, whether you want them or not. Politically, this one's easy. We just wanted to compete with everybody else. We wanted to prove that we were one of the big boys. And we felt like a way to do that was to take over territory. Specifically, we said we want to have naval supremacy. We want to prove that our Navy is awesome. And that's one of the driving motivations. Now, the Spanish-American War is going to roll around in the late 1800s. This is the first time that we get a chance to act like a world power. Okay? Because before this, we've kind of been keeping to ourselves. To understand this, you've got to know the background. Cuba was controlled at that time by Spain, but they didn't want to be controlled by Spain. There was a revolutionary movement to have independence from Spain. They want democracy. The Spanish haven't been treating the Cubans very well. They're exploiting them for raw materials and that kind of thing. So we support the Cubans. By the way, when it talks about them being oppressed, this is a picture that looks like it's from the Holocaust, but it's actually a Cuban guy who's been put into a concentration camp in Cuba by the Spanish. This is the kind of thing that they were doing. So America says, now wait a minute, if we help free them from the Spanish, then we can start to get resources from Cuba. We can turn those resources into finished products, and we can sell them right back to Cuba for a profit. Good plan. Let's do that. Some people say, oh, this is a good chance for us to build up our Navy and to prove to the world that we have a strong Navy. One guy in particular, Alfred Thayer Mahan, says, if you want to have a strong Navy in the world today, or a strong country, you're going to have a strong Navy. And this right here, the Spanish-American War, is a great chance to prove that our Navy is awesome because Cuba is an island. And Spain has to send their boats over too. So this will be primarily a naval battle or naval war. And I put the wrong picture there. It should have been Alfred Thayer Mahan, and it wasn't. We're just going to move on. Don't worry about the what will happen. We're going to go on to the next section. And we talked about this political cartoon, which is encouraging people to, encouraging the United States to get involved in Spain. We did a tug of war in class. All right, the Maine. Let's talk a little bit about the Maine. The Maine is a boat that the United States Navy has parked in Havana Harbor. It's right off the coast of Cuba, and the Maine explodes. Now, to this day, we do not know definitively whether it was exploded, whether it exploded through some accident. Somebody's, smoking too close to the boiler and they chuck their cigarette, or some gunpowder goes off, or whatever, or if the Spanish sunk it with a mine or a torpedo or something like that. We don't know exactly what happened. But back in the United States, there are a number of newspaper men who are writing articles basically making it very clear that Spain sunk the Maine. The Maine, they say, was sunk by Spain. This happened, we should go to war. Now, part of this is because you've got two different guys who own two different newspapers who are competing for reads, competing for sales. And they felt like whoever has the most eye-catching headline is probably going to get the purchase. And so they kind of one-up each other. We call this yellow journalism. Yellow journalism is using eye-catching headlines to sell newspapers instead of good investigation and good journalism. You see this all the time. I'm using the National Enquirer over here. Basically, it prides itself on having sensational news that you want to pick up because you want to find out if Oprah really was a teenage prostitute, according to this right here, or Sarah Palin really does have another man. This is the kind of thing that happens. Now, most likely those stories are not true, but somebody said they were, and so they say, fine, we'll publish it, we'll print it, people will buy this. That's yellow journalism. Okay. Well, Americans are reading this and they say, boy, if Spain sunk our boat, they need to pay. Let's go to war. The president keeps saying, no, we need more information. We're not ready yet. Hold off. Around the same time, there's something that's going to push us just all the way into the war. Okay, we're not quite there with the Maine, although it's close. Now this thing is going to push us a little closer. Okay. There's an ambassador from Spain to the United States whose name is Delome. That's him on the right. Okay. Delome is asked by the king, do you think that McKinley, the president of the United States, is likely to attack us? And Delome says, no, of course not. The guy's weak. He won't fight you. He's weak. Well, that letter gets intercepted by Cuban rebels who turn it over to the newspapers who say, more people will buy our newspaper. Let's publish this thing. And they do publish it. People now see that Spain is calling America, the American president, weak. This puts a lot of pressure on him. McKinley has to prove that he isn't weak. He's got to prove that he can stand up to other countries, so he declares war on Spain. This is the Spanish-American War. Now, in the United States history standards for South Carolina, the Spanish-American War isn't extensively covered. Basically, what you need to know is that it happened. And so we're not going to talk a lot about it, other than to say this. We have a clear advantage. Cuba is 90 miles off the coast of the Florida Keys. Spain is on the other side of the ocean. We send our Navy to blockade Cuba. It makes it very difficult for them to get the supplies and the people and all this to Spain. And so within a year, actually within a couple months, we win the Spanish-American War and Spain goes back home. Now, America after this is quickly going to say, we like taking territory. So we start taking other territory like Hawaii. By the way this is written in the notes is confusing. We did not take Hawaii from Spain. Spain is not in control of Hawaii when we take it. Okay. That looks a little confusing here. We do take the Philippines from Spain as part of the agreement that ends the war. And because we have Hawaii, which is right here, and the Philippines here, we say, this is great. Now we can expand all through the Pacific because we have two different fueling stations. So we could go to Asia, we can go to Australia, we can do whatever we want to do. Now we can become a world power. And this starts to concern some people. Because some folks say that we should go ahead and just build up an empire, it'll be awesome. And some folks like President McKinley say we should do it because these poor people in the Philippines, for example, is what they primarily were talking about, weren't fit for government. They're just backwards people who don't understand, Americanism or America. So because they're simple like children, we should rule them. That is a problem. The anti-imperialists say, yeah, they are like children. They're so much like children, they can never be totally incorporated into the United States. We should not build an empire because we're just dragging down our country. Now, y'all, both of these positions should freak you out a little bit. Both of them smack of social Darwinism. Okay, they're both saying we're better than everybody else. And there's also a little bit of racism in there. Okay, to put this in context, the example I used in class is my wife. My wife's from the Philippines. If I had said, honey, would you marry me because you're just a poor Filipino, you're a little bit backwards, and somebody has to take care of you so that you can have a good life, you would say, boy, you're a hardcore racist. And you'd be right. But that's pretty much exactly what we said at this point as a justification for building up an empire. So as the war ends, we sign a treaty with Spain that gives us control of not only the Philippines, but Wake Island, which is here, right here. You've got Guam, which is here, Puerto Rico, over in the Caribbean, and Cuba as well. We're surprised, though, that the Philippines is not immediately thrilled to have us there. They want freedom. They don't want somebody else to rule them. And so immediately we face an armed resistance, and you've got also a lot of protesters. So this raises a question. Should we let these people protest against the United States? Some people say the Constitution says they have freedom of speech, so yes. Other people say no. Well, this goes all the way to the Supreme Court. The question is, do the people of the Philippines have the same rights as American citizens? We call these the insular cases. And the Supreme Court looks at this issue and says, you know what? I don't think they do have citizenship rights. Just because we put our flag there doesn't mean you get the rights of the Constitution. Or in their words, the Constitution does not follow the flag. Therefore, we say these new territories, we're not going to turn them into states. They're just going to give us resources. And now the United States is seen by the world as not a champion of liberty and democracy, but just another colonizer like Spain had been before us. Look, that's standard 5.1 and 5.2. I hope that that's helpful for you. If you have any questions, you can email me, as always, at ngallion@greermiddlecollege.org, and I will see you next time.